Hargreaves Lansdown SIPP for non-UK residents or expats. We're going to be diving into this topic in detail today, and it's something we come across a lot in the industry. I'm joined by one of our senior advisors, Jonathan Laws, down in London. Jonathan, how are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. Still forgive the voice, still a bit man-flu-y, but yeah, getting there.
Very good. So obviously, Jonathan, we've been doing a range of videos recently on some of the big mainstream SIPP providers in the UK and what the impact is for non-UK residents or expats that have now left the UK. So could you start off by giving us a quick summary of the current situation with Hargreaves Lansdown, who they accept, who they don't accept, and what the rules are?
Yeah, so the long and short of it is that now Hargreaves Lansdown is a UK, based on disclosures, based on everything you said, recent updates, client experience, is now a UK tax resident only service. They no longer will open SIPP accounts or indeed dealing accounts for non-UK residents.
And so what does that mean if you've got a Hargreaves Lansdown SIPP and you're based in, say, Europe or you're based in America? Are there any limitations on what they can do, or are people getting letters saying you need to leave, or what's the current status on the ground?
Yes, so previously, Hargreaves Lansdown always had a bit of a carve-out for European Economic Area residents. That was sort of the one additional area they could service. That seems to have now changed. Whether that was an insurance-based, the European regulator, whatever it may be, it's rather irrelevant. It's now the case that that sort of little carve-out they had is gone. So that means those who no longer live in the UK, those who have non-UK beneficiaries. So, for example, you might live in the UK, but if you want to pass this pot on to your daughter who lives in Australia, you can no longer do that. The only option, what they call a survivor's pension, is to transfer it out or to another provider that will cater for a non-UK resident beneficiary, or they take it all out as a lump sum, which is probably not going to be very good from a local tax point of view. So that's a big one. Other limitations around non-UK residents, like a lot of other providers already made this decision many years ago. The AJ Bells of the world, the Interactive Investors, the Vanguards, etc. Won't pay out to a non-UK bank account, which is quite hard. It's getting harder and harder to actually maintain these days with all the debanking rules, etc. So that's obviously quite a key one. There's some other minor things around there. Investments, a lot of UK investment funds, they won't allow you to hold. They've decided only for UK residents. So, if you've got, I like Fund Smith Equity or whatever it may be, one of these big household name funds, you will not be able to keep that or be forced to sell it accordingly if you change residency.
And another one, so a really important point in there that a lot of people don't understand, if you are a non-UK resident yourself and you live with your spouse, she lives with you in France, Dubai, America, wherever you're living, and if you have children, you may well have written on your beneficiaries form what you want to happen at Hargreaves Lansdown, but if your wife, partner's beneficiary, whoever is a non-UK resident, they cannot take over the pension from you because obviously they're not allowed to open up a new Hargreaves Lansdown SIPP. So in that situation, John, what you're saying is that the beneficiary, at the point of a loved one dying, the beneficiary would need to do a transfer out to another non-UK resident SIPP that would accept them if they were a non-UK resident, right?
Yeah, indeed. And, if you're in a regulated jurisdiction as well, US or Europe, we don't know of any sort of compliant options that wouldn't require, the use of a financial advisor. And there's going to be a lot of kerfuffle for your loved ones at that stage. You probably thought, I'll just... When I go, they'll scrub my name out and insert my wife's name, insert my son's name, my daughter's name, or whatever it may be. But unfortunately, if they're abroad at the time, that's not going to be the case.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is, for me, it's alarm bells in my head because I know the offshore market at the back of my hand. I've been doing it for 15 years. There's a lot of bad advice in the international marketplace, particularly in jurisdictions such as Dubai and further afield. If somebody is in an emotional situation after having their mother or their father passed away, then having to get this paperwork from someone, go and research a financial advisor as to how to transfer out from this scheme. I think that it's not a situation, I've got very young children, but it's not a situation I would want to place my children in, a point that they've lost a loved one, well, I hope it's a loved one if they're in the family, that they're now having to research a new pension provider. And I think that causes the potential for something to go wrong, either for them to get taken advantage of or an unscrupulous financial advisor to work with them. I think it would be much better off for clients to be in a non-UK resident SIPP, which is suitable for them in the first place, and actually be able to involve their spouse, partner, potentially even their children or beneficiaries if they wanted to, as to how the money is invested, what the strategy is, what the cost of the portfolio is, what the sector weightings are. So if and when there is a day that money passes over, they are in a much better position. But anyway, what do I know? John, could you give any examples of Hargreaves Lansdown clients that you've dealt with specifically in Europe or the US and with holding a HL SIPP in the UK?
Yeah, so I've had a couple. So I've done myself personally quite a few transfers. They get a letter through from Hargreaves Lansdown, when they change their address. One was in Portugal, one was in the US, so they were forced to sort of sell down some funds. They obviously got some then of the, these are XYZ limitations you have, for you, and then we've helped consolidate them into whether there's existing clients, and we consolidate into their existing non-UK resident SIPP, or is a case of then there was a tiny amount, they ended up just withdrawing it, and wasn't worth a transfer. So yeah, we've had a few experiences like that. Hargreaves to have been pretty accommodating for that, and yeah, it used to be, as you said, they used to have a bit of a sort of a blind spot or grey area or whatever, or turn to kind of ignore it or just let it go with the European Economic Area. But with all the sort of Brexit stuff now behind us, the ability for UK financial services companies to passport their services into Europe no longer possible. That's why now you'll probably notice, for those of you watching this who already have a sort of non-UK resident SIPP, you'll have noticed your provider has probably opened up a base of operations in Europe. And that's because that's what they've been asked to do by the European regulator to remain compliant and to keep on servicing and accepting new European residents. So there's a lot of experience we've had there with people doing it. Relatively smooth process. Hargreaves Lansdown are very good provider. I think they are the biggest SIPP provider in the UK. So it's a well-worn path. And of course, there might be some in other jurisdictions where there's QROPs as an option, although very few and far between these days. So again, lots to sort of think about, and definitely worth getting in touch if you are abroad and do still have a Hargreaves Lansdown account. Yeah,
and it's an interesting point. I was about to mention that. I'd say like 10 years ago, if somebody had a Hargreaves Lansdown SIPP and they're round peg in a square hole, kind of holding on to a product which wasn't necessarily suitable for them. I mean, 10 years ago, a lot of financial advisors trying to flog QROPs and things to them which are by and large very expensive and often used very poorly by our financial advisors. The international marketplace has come on leaps and bounds by then, and I think part of that is the fact that a lot of schemes are realising a lot of people are going to leave the UK. At the moment, a lot of people are considering, should I go to Cyprus, Dubai? How do I avoid taxes in the UK or make themselves more tax efficient? So the market has got so much more competitive over the past 5 years that actually some of the non-UK resident SIPPs that we work with now are actually cheaper and more technology driven than some of the big powerhouses in the UK. So I think for non-UK residents now, it's not a case of, I have to work with a substandard person or the costs are going to be more expensive. At times, it's actually slightly cheaper now. So John, what would be your advice to someone if they've got a Hargreaves Lansdown SIPP, they're a non-UK resident, their spouse or their beneficiaries are non-UK residents? What would be your call to action list for them to do, so to speak?
So first thing to do is go come and speak to a financial advisor. It doesn't have to be Cameron James, although I think we're blooming good. So, might want to put it at the top of your list. But yeah, have a word with them. You got to make sure, right, where am I resident now? Where are my beneficiaries resident? Where are they going to be resident? And if any of those aren't in the UK, then there's a good chance you need to be moving your SIPP. Now, it depends on how large it is. What does the SIPP factor? Where does it factor into your retirement planning? Is it a huge portion? Well, then, probably really do want to look to move it. Is it a tiny portion that you're going to spend over the next year or two? Less of a concern. So that's sort of the key things to look at. And then go and get regulated advice accordingly on what to do with it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that we get a lot of people reaching out, and obviously they might be thinking, I have to do this, I have to jump through paperwork and whatnot, but it's so worth it. I mean, I've been doing this 15 years now. I've come across it. I've had clients of mine pass away without their situation fully sorted out for beneficiaries, and it just becomes a horrible, messy nightmare. And it almost becomes ironic. They're like, oh, I've got $500,000, but it's a nightmare to get it. It sounds a little bit harsh, but I almost think it's a bit selfish in a way of the person leaving the asset, because they're beneficiaries. They obviously don't want that money to not go to them, but they have to jump through all these hoops in order to be able to get it. And I think it really, if you're passing on money, take the responsibility, make your spouse or beneficiaries' lives a lot easier. If anyone wants to have a conversation with myself or Jonathan, one of our advisors here in the team, you can book in below. We can go for a full review of the current situation with your Hargreaves Lansdown pension, exactly what it cost you, the pound to the penny, to get it transferred into a non-UK resident SIPP which is suitable for you, with flexibility, better drawdown, different currencies, whatever you might need for your retirement. We put it all together for you in a free recommendation report for you to make an educated and informed decision. Jonathan, thank you for joining this morning. I hope your cold recovers somewhat.
So do I. Thank you.
All right, and as always, viewers, take care with your UK pension assets.